Hi there, Joe.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm good. You're such a fun guy. I loved listening to your
Oh,
podcast.
cool. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you. You got a lot going on.
I do, sir. I
Excellent.
love your graphic. Did an artist paint that for you? That's beautiful.
That's me. If you want a sticker, send me your address. I'll mail you one.
Oh, I totally do. What do I do? Email you?
Yeah, just send me your address and I'll send you one for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a busybody, so I do visual arts and I got the jazz show. I do my interview series. I'm an IT guy by day. I write. I got a lot of things going on.
Incredible. I am a sort of a multi-potentialate myself, so I totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started out boring and I've sort of branched out into more creative and interesting and, sort of breaking barriers as I go. But, I started as a lawyer.
Okay, I gotcha. And the thing about life is we're all kind of like a bottle of wine. It takes a while to age, it takes a while to get all the flavor, and then once you do, and then you add wisdom on top of that, it just kind of makes things a little better, more vibrant.
That's totally true. So I've guested on quite a few podcasts. So I just want to ask, is there anything specific that your listeners are looking for? Is there anything you would or wouldn't want me to veer towards? I want to totally respect whatever you've got going on here.
Yeah, no, I'm open. I really like to get to the essence of what makes you who you are and where you're at and just kind of being reflective and giving everybody out there just kind of a portal into exactly who you are. So,
Okay.
yeah, no surprises, just really having a conversation about the essence of you and all of those things, but everything's open. So yeah, we'll be in good shape.
Have fun. All right.
Yeah,
Sounds great.
definitely. So where are you coming out of?
So I'm in Menlo Park, California. I
Okay.
kind of hail from New York City and I spend maybe 3 months or so of the year in New York and then the rest of my time here. This is where I raise my kids. I don't know where I'll end up eventually. Nobody does, right?
Right.
Um, but, you know, you find yourself, my last name is Bloom, which is funny because I think you got to just try to bloom where you're planted, right?
There you
So,
go. There you
yeah.
go. It's funny how those metaphors kind of get in there and kind of become who you are. So
Yeah, yeah. It's also a really brandable last name, right?
totally. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like Tony Bennett, his real name was Antonio Benedetto, I believe.
Benedetto. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yep.
know, Bob Dylan was Robert Zimmerman.
Yep.
There's Bob Hope was something.
Yeah. What was Bob Hope?
It,
I wouldn't know him as much because I'm a crazy music fan. That's another reason I was so excited to see your
yeah,
neon jazz thing. And, I think every great conversation is really just a jazz riff in the end, right?
that's the
So
thing.
yeah, yeah,
That's really the thing. Yeah, I when I got on Podmatch, I initially was in there kind of as the neon jazz guy, and I did other interviews. I mean, that's why I was in there. But I really branched off with the famous interviews, and it's kind of become another feed. But I can't replace that on my page because then
yeah.
I lose my history and everything.
Right,
So,
right.
but at the same time, it makes people very excited. I
Oh
mean,
yeah. I
there,
mean, the thing that you say on some of your kind of front matter materials about it being the greatest American invention. I
yeah,
mean, it truly is the greatest American invention. There's no
yeah,
question about it. And, when you look at what we've sent out into the world, well, I don't know if you saw Oppenheimer yet,
I
but
haven't yet.
you really should. It's
I hear
pretty
it's good.
epic. But it's like this is a great contribution to civilization, this
Yeah.
art form. Truly.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in this time that we're living in right now, with everybody so divided, I think for us to find common ground coming out of a pandemic, entering an era of enlightenment, lots of things that are potentially here because a lot of things got brought to light. But I think the bottom line is that if we all really like talk to each other and get to know what we're doing and why we're doing it, we have a lot more in common. Like I caught a guy the other day who was driving a Veloster, and my stepdaughter has one. And I just kind of said, how does that car work for you? He was like, "Oh, it's not mine, it's my daughter's." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm in the same boat. What do you think?" And we just kind of talked for a minute. He just kind of stopped and looked over and he said, "Thank you for doing that." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "You just approached me and you were, conversational." it's like, I mean, it's not even anything I think about, but I think people, a lot of people are at that point. Plus, people love to share their story. I mean, that's huge, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah,
we're wired to connect to one another. And, as you say, some of these recent events have really disrupted that. And I think that confluence of the political divide and then the pandemic has really left us all so siloed in so many ways.
yeah,
And so I totally agree. Great conversations about topics that people are passionate about and who they are and what they do.
yeah.
Such a great way to bring people together. So I just love that.
Yeah, it's huge. And that's a natural, perfect segue into my first question, which is, how did you survive the last 3 years with COVID? How did you get through it? And how did it change you? Not only the way you do business, but who you are as a person.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I was actually working for a start around keeping people socially connected in their third. So I got kind of burnt out because what I did was I worked with my colleagues to kind of take everything we were doing and bring it online really quick. And I was the content and editorial director. So I was laying bricks really fast. Like, we need classes, we need people, we need to bring them together. What are we going to teach them? And then I was the one teaching them too. So
Yeah,
um, that kept me connected and it made me think really hard. I wrote a lot about how do you stay connected and involved and vital with this quote unquote new normal, which was the big SEO term that you had to use.
yeah,
Um, and so I learned from doing the work and doing the research. I really sort of thought about what people were doing, the teddy bears in the windows, the neighborhood scavenger hunts for kids. People were doing things like, I remember there was this guy in Connecticut who played the flute and he was willing to do a flutogram for anybody who wanted it. He would just get on Zoom with them and play them some music.
yeah,
Some really interesting things came out. People's humanity um, it was like all bets were off.
yeah,
It was like none of us knew what to do because this was so new and crazy that a lot of people's real depth and kindness came out in ways that you wouldn't have expected. And the hope is that that was the antidote to all of this polarization that we're dealing with in this country, right? Like this
yeah,
idea that, as you said earlier, it's like the abstractions that separate us are nothing
yeah.
compared to the commonality that can and should keep us together,
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
yeah, I think maybe by proxy we just kind of deepen the level of humanity with all of us. Whether we see it now or act completely on it, I think the seeds have been put in there, especially with the idea of mental health. Like, we're at a point now which falls into line with being an advocate, is that, everybody used to be like, just get over it. Like, if you heard about somebody that had a bad depression, yeah, just get over it. But now we understand it's more, it's leveled the playing field, not only in our professional lives, but personal lives and all of the lines of learn. It's like all of the arcs and that Venn diagram are just all like huddled together now.
It's so true. And on the topic of the pandemic, so the other thing that I did besides that work I was doing was I kept up with what I've been doing for 25 years, which I mentioned to you before we decided to meet, which is advocating for women both in the health space and the workplace when they find themselves sick. Well, everything was turned to 11 because first of all, just think of what happened to the way people were dealing with medical care during the pandemic. You didn't even go to the doctor or the hospital unless you had a diagnosis. And it was, you didn't, there was no elective surgery. There was no, I want to talk about my deviated septum, all
Yeah,
that was pushed away. And it was like people with diseases, people who needed surgeries, treatment had to be now. So, I really was, this is something I've been doing for 25 years and it's really my life's work, but I saw it in a new way because I really got some 360 empathy around the people that are taking care of people. The stakes of that became so much scarier and so much higher. I mean, imagine you're a you're a chemo nurse and a hospital is a scary place to be during a pandemic. But what do you have to do? You have to show up and take care of people, right? And if you're a person who's ill, you're automatically immunocompromised. Your anxiety levels are just so much higher. Everything is so amped up. And so it really it really taught me to fight even harder for the women that I've been fighting for all these years,
Yeah.
because everything was just, so blown up how huge everything was. Everything felt like an emergency. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I was in a women's march right after that Supreme Court decision came down with my I've lived with three generations of very strong-willed women, very, just like ready to go out there and kick ass. So
Good for
we
you, Joe.
yes. So we went so for all the things I didn't learn about the female psyche in my life, I'm getting now at 50. So
Excellent.
so we went out there and we went to the rally, and I was just thinking, how is it that the people that bring us into the world, all of us, how is it that there's this collective of people that are mandating what you can and can't do with your body health wise? It's just not even a rational thing. I don't even know why we've dumbed ourselves down socially where this is even something that we have to fight for. It's like
Yeah.
sending Rosa back to the back of the bus again. What are you doing?
Yeah. No,
We've already gone through this.
yeah, that's really true. And you know, what I've had to do for the last 25 years is think about how to work within the system that we have. And, I'm a lawyer, so
Sure.
obviously I know a lot about that whole story and how it kind of came together and then fell apart in the way that it did. And it's really about politics. Really, it's not about people, and
Yeah.
that's a huge part of the problem. But I can tell you a little bit about a book I'm working on right now and how that came to be,
Sure.
because it's related to what you just said. So about a year and a half ago, I went to an event in Brooklyn at the Brooklyn Public Library called the Brooklyn Night of Ideas, and it was a lot of really smart, interesting, committed public intellectuals who were there to talk to people about big issues in our society. And there was a woman there by the name of Catherine Colbert, who is a hugely accomplished lawyer and activist. And she had litigated Planned Parenthood versus Casey. And this was before, this was still not yet the post Roe era, but she knew what was going to happen because, I think most people knew,
Yeah.
the jig was up, right? The fix was in. And so she wrote this book called Controlling Women. And I just, I could not believe the things she was saying, but I felt really motivated. I mean, she was basically saying, we can't really do this in the courts anymore. We have to find a better way to stand up for women. And it's got to be intersectional, and it's got to be, different issues. I think she has in her book like 10 things you've got to do to help women. And so I went up to her all wide-eyed, please, will you sign my book? Oh my goodness. Let me tell you who I am. Let me tell you what I do. And I said, what do I do? What can I do? And she said, oh my gosh, you're doing some really important things. Like there are two things on your list, the health space and the workplace, that are really important to us continuing to find ways for women to be treated like truly equal citizens in our country.
Yeah.
So double down, do it more, find ways to expand what you're doing. And that's the reason I decided to write a book about it, because really, Joe, I wish I could help every woman who gets sick. I really wish I could be on the phone or in a cafe or going to an appointment with every woman who has these issues, because to tell you the truth, almost every woman who ever gets sick steps in at least one pothole, because there are potholes everywhere. And that's what I've learned over the last 25 years. So by taking this and making it into a book, my hope is to just reach more women, help more women, and the people who love them,
Yeah.
because for everybody, this is a maze. We talked earlier about how jazz is the greatest American invention. Well, our healthcare system is not the greatest
Right.
American invention,
True.
from the fact that if you don't have employer provided coverage, you're already a little bit behind the eight ball, which is nuts because that's only 50 years old that was the way that it had to do with linking to your job. But when you think about women, okay, they're more likely to be unemployed, underemployed, financially compromised, etc. They get diagnosed later. Think of all the ways that this system conspires to make it harder for women. It's
Yeah.
just the truth, right?
Yeah.
So what I have learned over all these years is there are ways that women can set themselves up for support, ask for the right kind of help. For me, I'd love the laws to totally change. There are smart people that always say we should have a universal healthcare system. They prove it 100 ways. They prove it all night, as Bruce Springsteen would say.
Yeah.
But getting that across the political finish line is a completely different story, right?
Yeah.
So I'm here working in that interstitial place where maybe we're not there yet. We've had some changes. We continue to have these kind of piecemeal changes to our legal system that are helping. But at the end of the day, it's the age of the advocate. It's the way you need a navigator to get through all of this. And that's why I'm so excited about the work I do, because every day I feel I can help somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. So who's been your hero? Who's been kind of a motivator for you in your life?
So obviously I have a few, but there was this incredible doctor named Dr. Paul Farmer. Um, he passed away just a short time ago, but he was this big believer in getting out there with medical care to people who need it. And his big mantra was every problem in every society comes down to deciding that one life is more important than another life. And when you think about that, if you really take that in to the way you approach people and your own work, if you just use that as a compass, that's the North Star for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
he's
that's
definitely
wonderful.
one.
Yeah.
Um, and, I mean, just countless women. And, I also feel it's not the famous people for me. It's the doers, it's the workers, it's the humble people that you never hear about, people who do hospice, nurses who really sit with a patient. These are the people. Nurses saved my daughter's life. She was she was got really sick as a tiny baby with no immune system, and I mean died on the table, and these nurses saved her.
Wow.
And it's the people who do the work. That's the thing. Our fame machine is pretty tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
We get told who to admire even though we don't realize it, right?
Yeah.
So me, I'm looking for the angels on the subway, and
Yeah.
they're there.
Yeah, they are all the time. What did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream to grow up and become?
So I pretty much always wanted to be a lawyer after I realized that I wasn't going to make it to Major League Baseball. Um, I went to I was in Little League. I was the only girl for a while, and I had a hero at the time who was the Yankee catcher, Thurman Munson.
Oh yeah.
And because I lived in New York, it was easy for guys like that to come and give out the awards at the Little League dinner. And I remember standing there with my little blue glasses during the Q&A, raising my hand. And I said, when do you think girls will make it to Major League Baseball? And he looked me right in the eye and he goes, never.
Oh
And
no.
I thought, okay, I cried a little.
Wow.
And then I thought, okay, but he was probably right. And he was. Um, so after that, I really, my father is a wonderful, wonderful, deep feeling, caring, fair human being. And he's a lawyer. And I just wanted to be just like him.
Right on.
Um, but then, as I, went to college and started reading all the books, I realized, wow, um, I really want to be a justice warrior somehow
Yeah.
after I pay off my student loans,
Yeah,
which
right.
but that was actually good experience too, because I worked for the corporates and I learned their secrets.
Yeah.
And I had this very specific legal background, which was employee benefits, as well as the way people are compensated in the workplace. And you know what? That flipped so perfectly into helping people the way I want to help them,
Sure.
because I understand, not just what happens to people when they interact with the healthcare system and how they pay for those things, but also, how do they stay employed? Because, that nexus between being employed and having the best benefits is so huge. That's one of the things I've noticed too. Like artists, freelancers, they're better off today after the Affordable Care Act. But before that,
Wow.
oh my
Yeah.
goodness, this was a nightmare, like
Uh-huh.
a true labyrinth.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyhow,
Yeah.
I guess I'm sort of doing what I wanted to do in the end, right?
Yeah, that's great. So as a baseball fan, if you could go back in time and see any event in baseball history, what would you love to have seen with your own eyes?
You know, I am a big lover of Lou Gehrig. I would have really loved to see Lou Gehrig lead that Yankee team.
Yeah.
I just, to me, what a persona. I
Yeah.
actually I actually saw Reggie Jackson hit the three home runs
Oh, wow.
at Yankee Stadium. I was there
Wow.
in the 70s.
Cool.
So that's pretty amazing,
That
right?
is cool.
Yeah, but and the other thing is anything with Jackie Robinson.
Yeah.
That's a hero to me.
Yeah.
Jackie Robinson is a huge hero to
Oh,
me.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
That
yeah,
would have been amazing for sure. So of all the things that you've done and accomplished so far in your life, what are you the proudest of?
my daughters, hands down, being able to bring two badass women into this world, and it's not that they have to be or are like me, just to have them individuate and become themselves. I can't imagine. I just can't imagine doing anything better.
So what's been one of the best responses you've ever gotten from the work you've done, fan letters, so to speak, that you've received?
um, I don't get a lot of letters, because that's the thing about this is, um, it's not, and it's hard when you're trying to sell a book. It's not this big public facing thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
I have taught at conferences, I have taught workshops and things like that, but it's a very intimate thing. It's bespoke. It's a one person to one person. But I'd have to say, um, there's this one woman named Karen who I just adored, who was an artist and a poet, among other things. And after we went through a big journey in getting our local teaching hospital to actually give her treatment and take her Medicare, when there were so many barriers to making that happen, she sent me a book of her poems and her paintings and just wrote me the loveliest note. And I think I'll never forget it. And I
That's
treasure
wonderful.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
The best advice I've ever gotten was from my grandfather, who said, everything that you assess in your life, he said it with dirty words, so I'm going to try to not do that, if I can. Let's see. He said, you should always assess, when you look at a situation or a relationship or a job or an experience, you go, is the good stuff you're getting worth the not as good stuff you're getting out of it? That's always how you should look at something. What's the balance?
Yep.
And that was really great advice.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Libra, so I see the balance when I saw the
Mm-hmm.
scales and weights. Um, so everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, readers, everybody that knows you, but you ultimately are in control. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a seeker and a wanderer and a questioner and a doer. I think I'm fully motivated by trying my best to figure out what my gifts are so that I can use them well.
So, do you have faith for humanity as someone that's advocating for those that need a voice and just seeing our world right now? Are you inspired? Are you optimistic?
I am optimistic. Yes, I do have faith in humanity. I think the best things that happen in our world are when we strip away the ideology, whether it's nationalism or, any specific membership in anything. I think the best things that happen are when two humans look at one another and recognize each other. And so, yes, I have huge faith in that because I think, it's a small thing that can radiate.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at it. Yeah.
Excellent. That's great. So, Rebecca, if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, your book, anything pertaining to your world, where can they go?
They should go to my website, which is www.whenwomengetsick.com. And thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we just successfully did a good jazz riff. I think we did okay.
Well, you're a pro, Joe. So thank you.
We do what we can. Thank you so much. Please do send me your address, and I will send that out to you. And best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much, Joe. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, you bet. My pleasure. Take care.
Take care.